Are you a scaling SaaS founder?
Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where we approach market size like a gold rush. Every corner, a chance to stake a claim and uncover untold riches. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Is it possible to scale your SaaS company to the moon without budgets that are out of this world? Without a doubt it is. It's the strategic reality waiting for you just to seize it. Contrary to common SaaS logic, scaling to massive levels doesn't mean having to empty your pockets, beg friends or family for money or angels, or raise ridiculous funding rounds. Here's how I've elevated SaaS business to new heights, expanding reach and impact, all while maintaining a budget firmly grounded in reality. You can do it too. For many SaaS startups, the journey from launch to lunar levels of success is just filled with financial pitfalls. It's really difficult. The common hurdles are raising money or scaling operations efficiently without a colossal budget, and then taking on competitors who have those colossal budgets. Those are challenges that can stall growth, causing many promising ventures to falter under the weight of just unsustainable spending or giving up because they can't afford it. It's almost never a problem of resources. You just have to be scrappy and resourceful. Here's how I see it. One is you want to leverage automation. We have a huge advantage in 2024 that didn't exist 5, 10, or 20 years ago when I started. Start by automating repetitive tasks and processes. Reduce the need for additional headcount and minimize human error. It allows you to scale operations without proportionally increasing your cost. And as wages rise, this will become increasingly important. And the great thing, I don't think there's ever been a time in history that has been better to build a company than today. So many ways to automate, and AI is just expanding that exponentially. Second is to focus on high impact channels. Instead of spreading your marketing budget across multiple channels, identify and invest in those that have the highest ROI. Don't know which has the highest ROI? There are tools that'll tell you that. But start with one single channel, get it working, and then expand from there. This targeted approach ensures that you're getting the most bang for your buck while reaching the right audience. Now, again, there are tools available today like never before to target very specific audience, so all of your market dollars work. Some people will say, and I heard this just a few weeks ago, half of marketing works and half is wasted. I just don't know which half. And maybe that was true 20, 50 years ago, but if somebody says that today, it's just wrong. You're just not thinking right, because you can track and target very specifically in today's world. And number 3 is to expand into adjacent markets thoughtfully. You want to dominate your core market first, then use the insights gained from that market to move into something that's adjacent. Don't do something that's completely unrelated or outside of your comfort zone, or, hey, I think this would be a good idea. Look at things that are adjacent, that are connected to your core market. And the strategic expansion allows you to leverage existing resources and knowledge, minimize risk, which is something we should definitely be looking at, and also minimize the cost of entering entirely new territories. I've had conversations with prospects or clients, and they're in one market, and let's say it is healthcare. And they're like, okay, let's go do government, or let's take a jump and we'll do commercial finance. It's like, well, what do those two things have in common? And what you want to do is find something what's a step away? What is connected to that? What makes sense? What's a logical next step? That this market loves what we have, and so this market that's slightly outside of that will love it too. But here's the key insight. is don't throw people and money at problems. Most of your competitors will absolutely do that. And almost all funded companies do this repeatedly. Don't fall for it. Find and solve the root cause. Be scrappy and resourceful. And that's really the key to scaling up huge without spending just going all haywire. Building a business is like climbing a mountain. Don't just buy the best gear and hope that the tools will get you up there to the top. Turn it into a calculated, strategic journey. Scaling up your SaaS to the moon isn't about how much you spend, but how wisely you invest the resources that you have. Embrace smart strategies. Keep that old budget lean. That will pave the way for sustainable growth and long-term success. So what we call future proof. In this crazy competitive SaaS landscape, that's what we want your company to be, future proof. Our founder on Tuesday was Ben Johnson, co-founder of Particle 41, development firm here in Dallas. He created to accelerate company initiatives through cutting-edge software development, DevOps, and data science. We talked about acquisitions, aligning the tech stack, leading through transition, and prioritizing fatherhood over engineering. Such a great episode. And our expert guest last week was Andrew Sykes from Habits at Work. He is on a mission to make sales the most trusted profession on earth. We talked about the Platinum 5 Minutes and how trust is built quickly, which leads to the golden hour. My favorite part was the illusion of transitioning from founder-led sales. Completely shifted my perspective. If you missed either of those episodes, go back and give them a listen. My guest today is Andrew Lee, founder of Parallaxes Capital. He has a rich background in finance, starting at Citigroup and then Lone Star Funds. Andy is a recognized voice in finance, featured in top publications like Wall Street Journal and Forbes. Welcome someone who knows how to build smart and with capital efficiency. Andy Lee. Hey, Andy, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Thank you for having us.
Tell me a little bit about your background, investment banking, private equity, and how that has shaped your approach to founding and running Parallaxes Capital.
Absolutely. I'm from the middle of nowhere, Champaign, Illinois, and I had the option to go to college a little early. I went to college when I was 15. When I
Wow.
graduated, I was 17, and unfortunately, Papa Lee wasn't having any of it, and he refused to sign my lease in New York City. He was like, "You're going to go get a PhD." Being rebellious, I refused, and he was like, "Look, we're going to meet in the middle. You're at least going to get a graduate degree." I got a graduate degree, a master's in taxation. And in that degree, it was 1 year. And the frank reason why I did it was twofold. One, it had a no coursework participation, so you didn't need to go to class. And two, it had an open book exam at the end of the year. For someone who didn't want to go to class, absolute godsend. Started my
Yeah.
career in investment banking, and there I worked on a tax project where I learned a little bit about how a large company was selling a tax asset back to a spinoff of theirs, Cloud Peak Energy. And I was like, this is fascinating. Someone should provide third party liquidity to it, but didn't think much of it. Went on to the private equity firm in Dallas, Texas called Lone Star Funds. And
Yep.
there they said, Andy, the only way you get promoted here is for you to create something. I was like, what in the world does one create? And so the one that captured everyone's imagination was that if you thought that drones were inevitable in our lifetimes, then you would charge a toll whenever Bezos flies a drone across the Hudson. So you would buy all the air rides along the Hudson. Obviously, Liberty State Park, as well as George Washington Bridge public easements, created a huge dent in our business plan. So that didn't get off the ground. But what did get off the ground was in creation and monetization of large tax assets. And so that was a project I worked on at Lone Star. And 7 years ago, the firm basically said, look, this is just too small for us. Because I said, how much can you deploy annually? And I said, 150 million bucks. They said, you're missing a zero. Why don't you go do this on yourself, by yourself, and we'll give you some money to go do it. So that was almost 7 years ago. It's been a labor of love. We've raised almost $500 million across 6 funds, and we're looking to create and monetize tax assets.
That's fantastic. So what is that transition like? A large firm like Lone Star and then starting your own firm. What was the pivotal moment there? Or what have been the big challenges?
So many. I think that are in any new space or opportunity set, a number of items might that be product market fit, but also fundraising market fit and employee market fit that I don't think I fully appreciated. So let's start with product market fit. For what we do, ultimately, there needs to be a congruent go to market plan on both the supply of capital, i.e., we raise money primarily from endowments and foundations. And that's a source of capital that my old firm had not tapped in earnest, primarily because of its long lineage, primarily from the Bass family in Texas, that they were able to primarily interact with sovereign wealth funds and gather capital in that regard. And so, while many of the endowments and foundations had a strong appreciation for the Lone Star brand, they didn't really understand it or know it in earnest, primarily because the checks were so large in order to engage with the firm that they heard the lore of the firm, but not much beyond that. And so there was a large educational element in order to drive an outcome. And so, as part of that, in order to raise what I might call our seed round or our fund one, I did 800 meetings over the course of almost 3 months in
Wow.
order to get 16 investors. And so it was an incredibly painful, but an experience that I'm incredibly thankful for. So that's one. Two, we talked a little bit about product market fit, but here we're also there's an element of employee market fit. For any new company, you need to figure out if you have the right individuals. And oftentimes the individuals that get you from 0 to 1 are not the individuals that get you from 1 to 10. And so
Yes.
there is a endeavor whereby you obviously want to raise individuals who entrusted their careers with you relatively early on with the hopes that they can elevate their game as you grow and scale as a firm. And that's a challenge that I myself as a CEO oftentimes like I'm not ready for it, but I just got to step up and scale myself, take yourself to the next level. And sometimes that's what people want, and that's other time that's not what they want. And it's trying to find congruency relative to what the needs of the market opportunity set are and integrating the employees relative to that. I think that's something that for a firm such as a Salesforce, a Oracle, among others, they have very well understood and defined go-to-markets. Might that be SDRs, AEs? They know what resonates with their ideal customer profile, the ideal buyer profile, and they have large brand recognition, none of which a young startup likely has. And so,
Right.
in that regard, building those quote unquote playbooks, building avenues through which there is brand awareness and recognition such that your sellers as they enter and engage with various buyers that they have the best chance to win because oftentimes you're figuring it out. Not many things are still very much white space, and it's our job in order to create the avenues for them to be successful. So that's an element that I think to be very trying for many startup founders. It's an absolute grind.
Yes. Yes. And last time we talked, you mentioned the challenge of, yeah, it was a great analogy, selling a vitamin rather than a painkiller. Can you
Yeah,
elaborate on the analogy and how that influences sales strategy and go to market?
absolutely. So the way I might describe that a vitamin versus a painkiller sale is if you have a vitamin, your wife tells you, "Hey, Jeff, you should really be eating your fish oil for your eyes." And you're like, "Great. It's right in front of me right now. You're here. I'll take it."
Yeah.
However, if you're traveling, you get busy, you're like, it's a little inconvenient. I'll do it when I get home.
I'll do it
So that's
later.
what I might describe as a vitamin
Yeah.
versus a painkiller. Like you wake up with a splitting headache and you're like, oh my gosh, I need that Advil. I don't literally care any brand, like in any configuration. I'll take it. And that's for many people. If you think about just buying a house, many people, especially more recently, have when they have a kid, when they growing up, let me start that again. When they are looking to buy homes after they get married, it's a nice to have. So like they'll figuring out as housing inventory comes on the market. However, if the moment they have a kid, all of a sudden the impetus becomes we need a house yesterday. And so many individuals, all of a sudden, I'm almost willing to pay top dollar, if not overpay, in order to get their family into a safe home. And so that's something that I might describe as for while they were just married, happily trying to figure out what's next. That's interesting and it's a vitamin. But whenever they have a kid, it just quickly becomes a painkiller. And trying to for many of the startups that you engage with, like they need to figure out for themselves, what am I selling? Am I selling a vitamin or am I selling a painkiller? The latter obviously is way easier to sell than the former.
And it's a really big difference. And I think sometimes it is just in the way they position it. And vitamins are important. And there are certain vitamins, maybe it is the fish oil, but really explaining that the benefits and why that's important and turn that into a must. If you don't do something, then it could affect heart health. And so now it becomes much higher priority than it was if it's just a nice to have. Do you see that, or do you think there's
Absolutely.
like a fundamental difference between the two?
Absolutely. Look, positioning is a very big part of life, but you can never get someone to the well and force, you can get someone to the well, you can't force them to drink. And so, especially if what you're selling is a proactive approach to health, among others, for many, they need to experience some level of pain.
That's
And I
true.
think many of the people that you engage with from a startup perspective, if there isn't enough pain, it probably isn't worth selling. We all have a incredible opportunity cost when it comes to our time. And so trying to figure out, yes, theoretically someone could buy it. How do we ensure that is enough pain felt in a large enough group to make it worth our time and effort is a big question mark.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're shifting from having a feature or the vitamin and you're really working to build it into a product that really is a painkiller, yeah, how do you manage, buyer segmentation? And you mentioned the employee fit. So how do you get the employee fit right in that process as well so that you're really getting that whole thing aligned?
Yeah. So look, and I think for especially for the individuals that you are recruiting and are trying to attract to your firm, there are specific analysis that I didn't fully appreciate way back when. I'll fully appreciate that I might describe as a TAM, a SAM, and a SOM. So TAM, total addressable market; SAM, serviceable addressable market; and SOM, serviceable obtainable market. And so the one that I would most focus on is the SOM, primarily because, yes, there are hundreds of companies that could probably, or thousands of tech companies that could potentially use the technology solution that you're selling, but
Sure.
who is going to be buying from a young startup from a security perspective? Whereby if you are Mount Sinai and you're selling into them a CRM, they could potentially buy it from you and they probably feel some level of pain, but they have such rigorous diligence requisite in order for them to buy your product. And they also need so much proof in the pudding in order for them to feel the level of validation, but also for them to make it easy for them to buy. They just need a lot of case studies. That might be a candidate that falls within your TAM, but for a day one startup, that highly unlikely falls within your SOM. That's just not a firm that you're going to start with day one. I think it's a little bit about life where I describe it as crawl, walk, run. So before you can hit a hospital system like a Mount Sinai, you're starting off with your local doctor. How do you get your local doctor onboarded when a happy customer that is gonna not churn and be retained? That's a very big point of focus, whereby you can start with your local practitioner, moving on to local health systems before hitting national systems. Might that be the Mount Sinai's Cleveland clinics of the world? And so those are all elements that you need to be able to bring to bear, demonstrating that you can not only get angel investors, then small venture capital firms, and eventually growth equity firms. Those are all evolutions as you kill risk, but also demonstrate your value add and demonstrate that you clearly understand the pain that is felt and have an appreciation and an empathy for that buyer's journey. That's an element that founder led sales is incredibly important because if you can't sell it and you probably feel the most pain in that regard, probably having dealt with the pain before or have done a listening tour, how is any young SDR, head of sales, ever gonna broach that? Because they have never lived that problem. They have great skill sets as it pertains to sales, but they just never have appreciated that problem or felt that pain or empathized with that buyer.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I see a lot, especially with technical founders, is they may say, I'm not good at sales or I don't know how to sell, which
Get good.
I love that. That's great advice. So what do you tell founders like that and how do they get good?
Look, and I think I learned this unfortunately relatively early on, whereby look, sales is ultimately the most important skill set in life.
Yeah.
It's you're gonna have to sell your wife, your husband on marrying you, your kids on eating vegetables, your customers on that you're gonna solve their problems, and ultimately that investors for them to partner with you, employees that you're gonna be great stewards of their careers because they're taking a risk with you. All of
Yes.
those are elements that you need to bring to bear. So whether you like it or not as a founder, you're selling in every
Yes.
facet. You might as well just get good at it, accept it and get good at it.
And that's so true. So many things in life. And I always laugh when they say, I'm not good at it. And then we go through some of the examples. Are you married? There's a sales job right there. If the answer is yes, then you convince somebody to take the leap with you. That's a big deal. You're great at sales, obviously. So just getting past that and getting into it and building it's a skill that can be built for sure.
Absolutely. It's a muscle and you need to I keep telling people this. If you won't eat your own dog food, no one's gonna eat it. So
Yeah.
you gotta have conviction about the product you're selling. And you need to almost transfer that excitement for the product to the individual across from you. Like you're selling your kid on eating vegetables. You got to be like, this is the best thing since sliced bread, better than any chocolate, candy, anything. Like it's good for you. Like everything that you could that would resonate with a kid, that would ultimately persuade them to take that leap of faith to try that icky green thing in front of them.
Yes. That's great. When you're assessing investments, potential investments in companies, what are some things that you look for? And maybe how has that shifted over the last couple of years? Or has it?
Absolutely. So I think it's two items, right? It's access and it's judgment. I think when you look first time founders, the joke that's always made is they're very product centric, and second time founders are very distribution centric. And
Yes.
I think a big element of that is the latter, the second time founder recognizes that they need to scale in order to overcome the cost base requisite and ultimately get out and away from being or burning cash to being self sufficient. The former, i.e., the individual fair focus on product, really struggles with that element whereby they are concerned about giving their customers a bad product. But I think it speaks to the point about pain. If your seller is feeling so much pain, they are very much willing to take almost anything that might help alleviate that. So if you
Yeah.
have a problem, a solution that can help alleviate portions of that to the point about starting off as a feature before becoming the product itself, those are elements that they are open to investing behind you. Obviously, you want to ensure that you're a good steward of their trust because they're partnering with someone who might not otherwise have a great value proposition today. But it speaks to you need to know that there is enough pain for you to undertake that journey, for them to undertake that journey. Because if everyone, especially when you're a startup founder, we live in a culture where we very much admire founders and we're unwilling to say no. That's the worst thing that any founder has in front of them because they don't disqualify. Like, Jeff, you like you should take vitamins. Can I sell you the vitamin? You're like, you should really eat it. And you're like, it's I can't tell the difference between your vitamin versus the whole food vitamin versus what I can get at the local mart. So yeah, I'll get to it. I won't, but it's not big enough of a pain point right now. And so those are elements that you need to discern for yourself as a founder. How do I ultimately glean and how do I ultimately ensure that the pain that I'm hearing is actually a real pain and people are willing to pay me money for it? I think too many founders hear pain, they think it's validation, but ultimately, if no one's willing to put money in your pocket, that was never a real pain to begin with.
If you want fresh ideas to win against competitors, check out my book, Small Fish, Big Pond, Building a World-Class Business That Swims Circles Around Competitors. Small Fish, Big Pond delivers powerful marketing and leadership lessons guaranteed to enhance your marketing, wrap value around your clients, and guide their buying journey to conclude that your company is the only solution for them. It includes step-by-step frameworks, time-tested growth principles to attract ideal clients, convert them, and then transform them into your brand ambassadors. Pick up the print, ebook, or audio today at smallfishbigpond.com or Amazon. Remember, all book profits go to charity, always. And how do we avoid chasing those false signals?
I think there's a level of disqualification almost from the get go, right? So, to the point about a Mount Sinai, have they ever bought from a startup? 1 year, especially one that just launched? No, they're probably buying enterprise level security products with enterprise level security that have been on market for 10 years. They're not going to want to be the first use case. They're going to look to influencers in their space who are tech forward that have already taken that risk before they ever take that risk. So figure out who those influencers are because they've already created, like, almost nothing in life is an invention. Like, especially
Right.
go to market. It's already been done. Someone has already figured it out. So you just need to go replicate it and try to figure out how to customize it for the product that you're selling. So who are the influencers? What are their buying criteria? And who are they influenced by? Because everyone has someone that they look up to. And all these buyers, they obviously want to be on the leading edge. And so it's a big struggle because they want to give you feedback, but many founders really struggle to hear or listen to what they're actually being told. Oftentimes, people are telling to their face, we can't buy you until you get to an enterprise level security, among others. But people are like, I came away with that meeting. That was phenomenal. He basically told you to your face he won't buy from you for another 10 years. Don't waste another moment with him or her.
And that makes a lot of sense. It is hard, especially being so close to the product and the marketplace, to hear that. To really take that note, to really see that feedback for what it is, instead of, as entrepreneurs, we're the eternal optimist. We always, it's like they say no. Okay, see, you think that there's a chance? It's
I
hard
have
to do.
heard that it is healthy this delusionment that we have as entrepreneurs, unfortunately. There's some element that you need to will things into existence, but there's a realism that needs to be injected into everything that we do because you just have a significant opportunity of opportunity cost as it pertains to your time. Like your husband, your wife, like they're alongside you as a partner on this journey. So are your kids. Like it's rough on them as well. Forget like you need to realize for yourself you know who you're doing it for. It's oftentimes not just you yourself. Do you have business partners? Do you have customers? You have employees who are believing in you that you are realistic and know when to give up on a
Yeah,
prospect.
that's hard to do. Very hard to do. Hard to give up on a prospect. Hard to give up on a business. Hard to give up on an idea. But sometimes those are the most freeing decisions that we have, because it does free up the time to pursue things that are even better, or that are worth more.
Absolutely. And it's the problem with every entrepreneur in the sense that there's always a shiny gold thing off in the distance that would
Yes.
suggest, hey, this is the holy grail. There's no silver bullet in life. Your
Right.
job is to like slowly but surely knock out one risk after another. There are a 10-page bullet list of things that why someone might say no. Your job's to knock that shit all out. And that just
Yeah.
takes time and that's just a grind. It's not rocket science, with the exception of rocket science.
And most of it's been done before, so it's not like you have to invent new ways of doing it. It's understanding what's out there, what has worked in the past, and using it.
Absolutely. And that's just an element where I think a lot of entrepreneurs, with the exception of talking to other founders of other startups, they don't really talk about their pain. They say things are going great. When the reality is, no, nothing ever in life is going great. Like you have a community who has invested in you all your life and believes in you. Share your considerations. Tell them plainly what their issues are. Like, things are going well, there are challenges. Now, let me tell you what my challenges are. Everyone who has been alongside you in this journey, they want to see you succeed. And in that regard, like, you're not people can't understand what problems you have if you don't tell it to them. They're not mind readers as far as I'm aware. But if you tell them what your challenges are, you have a brain trust of individuals who are cheering you on, who will start helping think about and be thought partners as to how you can overcome them and share resources, introductions among others to people that could help you solve that problem. Sure, it might
Yeah,
not be the silver bullet, but it's all incremental and it helps drive to outcomes that ultimately help you clear the hump that's in front of you.
that's big. And very underutilized resource as well. And a lot of us as founders, entrepreneurs, we're going and just trying to do it on our own. But there's so much more out there, and being able to leverage the experiences of other people is so valuable.
Absolutely.
As an investor, when you're looking at a business and making investments, how do you balance the need for innovation with the practical practical? Let me try that again. How do you balance the need for innovation with the practical aspects of running a business in terms of capital allocation?
Look, the reality, it's the exact same thing in my mind. In investments, so it depends on what kind of investing that you do. But let's say you're a venture capitalist. Like, they can have 99 flameouts so long as they hit Facebook. They can have a 10 times, 1,000x return and a 10 times fund. They don't care. Like in long short hedge funds, they're looking for a 51-49 edge. So 51% of the time they make money, 49% of the time they don't. And they are able to grind it out. In fixed income, you can have you can have one loser and nine winners, and you're still doing incredibly well. So there's always a assessment element. In the same way that for hiring, like, no one has a at bat of a perfect one when it comes to hiring. Like, inherently, you're just taking risk. These individuals demonstrate the attributes that I prize. They have competencies, the right degrees, the right experience. But are we going to jive, and are they going to jive with the market? Are they going to remain excited for the market opportunity that's in front of us? And how do we figure that out? Like, when we were hiring, when I was at my own private equity firm, if half the class that we started off with as investment associates, they survived after a year, that was a huge win. Like, you're never gonna bet 100. Don't worry. Don't overthink it. Obviously, on the edges, you can improve your process, but there's such an element that you're trying to get people to fail fast. Every While we make investments, you're also making an investment of people. Who do you deploy against an opportunity? Time. How much time do I allocate to an opportunity? And also money. Am I willing to hire a headhunter could potentially help me reduce the funnel and only help me meet top candidates? That costs time and that costs money. That some a good hunter is worth their fee in gold. And those are
Yes.
all elements that can be risk mitigation, but also avenues that increase the friction in your process. So those are all elements that we are fundamentally all investing in the same way that an employee is and a company is investing dollars to bring on an employee. An employee is fundamentally investing their time into an endeavor. Is this startup, this opportunity, going to be better than me going to be an engineer at Facebook? Though that's an investment of their time and their
Yeah.
belief in you as an entrepreneur. Those are all elements that each and every day, whether we like it or not, we're making risk assessments and making investments of our time. Like this conversation that you're having, you believe that I'm fundamentally going to provide value to your stakeholder base. You
Yes.
invested time for a pre-call, time right now to have a conversation. And that's just an assessment on all our parts. What are we potentially giving up, i.e., like, this could be a terrible episode and nobody wants to listen to it, and in which case you might have wasted an hour, 2 hours of your time. On the flip side, It might result in 1,000 listeners. And that would be a great time to value for you, whereby you would have 1,000 hours of content being consumed and you've only invested 2 hours into it. That's great.
Right.
That would be great from a return on effort perspective. Like in terms of leverage, there are four forms of leverage in life. That's capital, that is people, that's media, and that's technology. Here is one exact example of an investment that you're making in media, that we're making invest in a media, and trying to reach audiences that we might not have access to otherwise, finding avenues to help create value for stakeholders writ large.
That's a really good way to look at it. How do you evaluate businesses to decide whether they're investable or not? And maybe some things that founders don't necessarily think about that you say this is a lot more important than.
Perspective. How many companies has a startup founder really looked at? Oftentimes, here's how I might put it. A investor has seen probably 10 companies that look and feel like you. And so they have a very good sense as to where is your value prop stack up relative to the other 10 names I just met with, or the quality of the founder. Do I believe that you're the right founder and do you have founder market fit for this overall opportunity? So one of the elements is many startup founders lack perspective because they're so insular. They don't know what product they're really selling the venture capitalist. So let me give an example. A venture capitalist isn't looking for a 10 million to a $50 million outcome. But sometimes entrepreneurs are in the under promise, over deliver camp. And they're like, this is what we can achieve. Wonderful. You're not a product, you don't have product market fit with the venture capitalist whatsoever. You might be great, but the venture capitalist cannot go back to his LPs and say, this is a great firm. We backed them and they're going to get a $50 million exit. They're going to get laughed out of the room. They can't sell that to their LPs. They need to swing for the fences and get $1 billion outcomes on the low end in order to make all of this math and gymnastics work. And so that's a level of, have you listened to your customer base, the venture capitalists? Do you have the appropriate perspective? Are you going to be able to deliver against that? So that's, I would say, the big element when it comes to investing in businesses where entrepreneurs just lack perspective. As it pertains to what we do here at Parallaxes, look, we are very focused on doing what we do in the public markets. So we invest behind investment grade, near investment grade companies that
Sure.
are north of $5 billion in enterprise value, and we monetize their large tax assets. We're looking for asymmetric returns relative to what is we're able to glean from one, their equity story as well as their debt. And we want to create value by buying these assets relatively cheaply. By doing so, we're able to deliver and value for our investors, i.e., endowments and foundations, but also deliver upfront cash for many of these sellers who just don't want to be holding on to 15-year long annuity like products. That's just not what a venture capitalist is looking to do, nor is a startup founder looking to hold on to annuity like products. They're looking for home runs and slam dunks.
Yeah, very different. There's an article in January in Wall Street Journal talking about Parallaxes and the strangest hustle on Wall Street. And I think it's absolutely brilliant. What you're doing is so different than other companies.
Absolutely. And to be clear, we've done a lot of things that I would never have figured that we were gonna do. So more recently, less than 2 weeks ago, we actually filmed a rap video. You'll be like, what is an
That's great.
investment firm doing a rap video? It's entirely for search engine optimization. Today, despite having invested heavily in creating educational content for people on their industry writ large and having our own podcast on what we do, tax receivable agreements, we're still only on page 2 of Google, primarily driven by domain authority, which I'm sure many of your listeners are very familiar with. It's hard to
Yes.
overcome large law firms and their publishing arms. despite the fact that they may not write the best or most relevant content about the space. The moment
Sure.
they put a paper out that says those words, they go to the top. And so we're talking to a optimization firm around SEO, and they were like, "Look, you could publish for a article a month for the next 5 years. You might at that point of get to page one." And we were like, how does anyone get to page one otherwise? And they were like, we can go viral. And we're like, how does one go viral? That's not exactly, there's no playbook for that. And so we were
Right.
like, what does one do? And so two things that jumped to mind was, why don't we do a music video? Primarily because not many investment firms do music videos. The bar is relatively low in that regard.
Yeah.
And two large firms last year did them, Blackstone and Apollo. And they came out pretty well. And we are like, all right, we're going to put ourselves out there. We're going to write and prepare a rap video. And we're just going to see what goes. That was a risk allocation on our part and an investment on our side. We spent $5,000 and 2 hours as a team to prepare that rap video, and we'll see how it goes. We definitely never, that's one thing that I never thought I would ever be doing.
I think it's brilliant. You're doing things that nobody else is doing in the industry. And I think that's really fresh and unique. Just thinking about that, you're thinking creatively in an industry when investment is traditionally stuffy and reserved and not fun. And you're really being the opposite of that and making it fun and engaging. And I think that's what a lot of companies either are not willing to do or they just don't have the creative insight to even think that way.
Absolutely. And so look, people always say tax is boring. I would say that it is the largest asset class in the world that people has never paid attention to. And we're trying to bring light to that.
Yeah, that's really big. What are some misconceptions that you think first time entrepreneurs have about the investment world or raising capital? And how do you address those in your talks and articles?
The elements that I think people really struggle with is, to the point about earlier, empathizing with the individual across from them, the venture capitalist, the angel investor, understanding their pain points and their needs. So many times, like, we get outreach from companies that don't hit within our strike zone. So if you are, let me give an example. My friend, a good friend of mine, is a tech venture capitalist. He gets approached all the time for consumer companies that are in the femtech space. And he's like, I don't do anything in feminine technology. That's just like straight out of my strike zone. I don't pretend that he doesn't pretend that he has expertise in that regard. Like, he gets hit up for things such as like Buzz headwear, like consumer technology. And he's, I do enterprise SaaS tech. That's not even in the right zip code. So just
And
knowing who you're even selling into, because you can't draw blood from a stone. No one is gonna go outside of their mandate for something like that when it's so far outside of their core product offering that they're selling their investors. Like, we buy annuity like products. You telling me that you have an asymmetric 1000 times return but a very 99% chance of loss is not what I sold my LPs, and I'm never going to invest in that. And so just
right,
failing to understand where that person is coming from. Like, I have a friend who, God bless his heart, like, he, to your point about being somewhat delusional, he might go to a bar and the girl might say, I have a boyfriend. He's like, you're not married yet? You're still, as far as I'm concerned, on your tax filing, still single. Yeah, I guess you're not wrong. But what is the probability that you're going to have a first date? Not very high. So, in that regard, like, you can't sell ice to an Eskimo. Why bother trying? You're
yeah,
better off hitting her up to see if she has any single girlfriends than anything else.
yeah. I think that just goes back to what you were talking about in the beginning is really the product market fit and that it's taking the TAM and then breaking that down to the SAM and the sum. What is a likely outcome? Where do you have the greatest opportunity to succeed? And it's not in just getting a list of everybody who has investor in some sort of capacity on a list and blasting them all, but really focusing in on who is most likely to see value in what you're building. And that's true if you're trying to sell and build clients. And it's also true when you're out there seeking investment.
Absolutely. It To be clear, it took me a long time to learn that lesson. So I don't envision, like, I can say this right now, that people are going to absorb that overnight.
It does take time. Yeah. Especially just being an entrepreneur. Like I said, we are the eternal optimist. And we think that there's a shot, even when there isn't. We want to believe that there is because what we built is fantastic. And if they just see it, then they'll see the value and they'll be like, well, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. I have to invest.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What should founders be thinking about as they raise capital in today's market? How have things changed over the last couple of years? What do you see in the market? What are you hearing? And what do you think the future looks like?
I guess, look, growth will always be prized relative to cash flows. That said, I think it needs to be measured and understandable growth. Do you want to invest behind a consumer sale, or do you want to invest behind an enterprise sale? So a consumer sale, like, you could potentially get revenues overnight. It might not be sticky revenue. Or do you want to invest behind a piece of revenue that might come in 6, 9, 12 months, but it's incredibly sticky? Like, those are investments, and ultimately items, risk, rewards that a founder has to weigh. How do I think about, and you've got to make investments on both sides of the equation, because the consumer sale might keep the light on. The enterprise sales is ultimately where you get enterprise value and where it's recurring in nature versus a credit card that may get cut off overnight. So those are all elements that you likely need to do things that are not scalable initially, the consumer sale, to get enough proof points, to get enough data to, in order to drive and serve to pollinate the enterprise sale. But for the enterprise sale, like, you need to start those conversations today, ideally yesterday. The way to talk about it, when's the last time you should have planted a tree? Like 20 years ago, ideally to get
Right.
shade. The next best time is today, right? So, like, in those instances, like, nobody wants to go on a first date and be like, let's get married. The girl's gonna be like, what are you talking about? Like, you want to have started that conversation, built that relationship, cultivated it. Like, no buyer is buying overnight. Like, it takes a number of conversations. If you came in guns blazing, everyone gets defensive. Like, why is this guy so pushy? Like, it
Yeah.
would ultimately deteriorate your value proposition. And ultimately, do people really want to engage with you, even if they think you have the best product in the world, in fear that you're just going to hound them till kingdom come?
That's some great advice. What do you think about AI in the investment world? How do you think that's going to change, or will it change how investments are made or managed in the future?
I think it's entirely around frequency. So obviously, where you have the most frequency is in mutual funds, ETFs, among others. That
Sure.
probably creates the appropriate fertile ground for artificial intelligence to be brought to bear on one end. On the other side of the equation, AI can be helpful, but if the frequency at which you're doing transactions is once a year, once every 2 years, there is just less data to create avenues through which artificial intelligence can help provide value. Avenues that it can provide value in is in data rich environments for investing. So, like, on the private side, there are two things that people talk a lot about: it's access and it's judgment. Do you have sufficient judgment to be willing to pay an even higher price than the next guy over to win an auction in order to create, because you know something that everyone else doesn't, that this business is what has an inflection point and is going to take the next stage in its growth? One. Two, on the access side, how do I convince the just or SaaS enterprise founders of the world to partner with me? Because everyone looks and feels the same. We're all generically in the same ballpark from a price perspective. 10 times EBITDA multiple. Like, why pick us over anyone else? Those are all elements that it becomes a sales game. Like, here's why you should pick me. It's because I will be in the trenches with you. I have a operational team that can help you see around the corner. I have best line of sight and relationships with people in order to get you your next round of funding. Those are all elements that help a startup founder kill risk, and items that they might be like, versus someone who's just money. This guy has value add. So like I might pick
Yeah.
him over anyone else. So that's a sales element of it.
Thanks again, Andy, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom and insights. You can learn more about Andy and Parallaxes Capital at plxcap.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. Full episodes, video shorts, training, outtakes, quite a bit there. So go check that out on YouTube. Great leaders stay in touch. And it's easy to forget or not know what to say to reconnect. So reconnect with an old friend by sharing this episode and discussing your thoughts on it. They'll appreciate it, and your status will just bump right up in their eyes. They'll want to reconnect. Everyone who shares this week gets Buzz Builder Boomerang. Toss it out with your brand message and watch it return with a crowd of curious customers. Warning, side effects may include sudden surges in popularity and maybe a little paparazzi. Join us next Tuesday where our founder is Pascal Weinberger, co-founder and CEO of Bardeen.ai. Bardeen automates repetitive and manual workflows across web apps. It's a pretty amazing product from another exceptional founder who's built in a really smart way. You'll like this one and can probably use some of his ideas in your own business, along with Bardeen, because it's just a cool product. And next week on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, 1 week from today, we have Michael Begg, co-founder of AMZ Advisors. It's an e-commerce advisory which has generated $500 million in sales for their clients. Michael will be here to talk about digital marketing and what we can learn from e-commerce and put into place in our SaaS companies and specifically in our PLG motion. And of course, expansion into international markets is something they've done well. So great lessons there. So I will see you next time. And as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/SaaSfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.